Okay, so you've given us a really fascinating stack of stuff to dig into this time,
Oh, yeah.
pages 1 through 48.
Yeah.
And as always, I guess our kind of mission is to kind of really try to extract the most fascinating, the most um, useful, I guess, insights from these pages,
Mm.
and to give you a shortcut, I guess, to understanding some really deep ideas
Absolutely.
without getting, I guess, bogged down in every single little detail.
Yeah, right.
We're really on the hunt for, those kind of surprising nuggets.
Oh, yeah. Those aha moments.
Yeah, exactly. Aha
Yeah,
moments we know you enjoy.
that's right.
And so as we were kind of exploring these initial pages, I mean, some really compelling themes, I think, emerged.
Absolutely.
We see this really interesting interplay between, what we think of as scientific and mystical
Yeah,
ways of understanding the world.
that's right.
Very, very profound explorations into the nature of reality and consciousness,
Yeah.
um, and kind of echoes from ancient wisdom traditions.
That's right.
What's particularly striking to me is how these seemingly different areas are presented as deeply interconnected
Yeah.
within this material.
Are all woven together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's kind of dive right into this blurring of lines between science and mysticism. I think it's very easy in our modern world to kind of see them as completely separate, almost opposing forces.
Yeah, I think that's true. I think that's our sort of default position.
Yeah, almost like a default.
Yeah, it's science versus religion.
Yeah.
But historically, especially in the early days of what we now call science,
Right.
that wasn't the case at all.
It sounds like it wasn't. Yeah.
No. The material really highlights how even some of the towering figures in the development of positive science,
Yeah.
individuals like Newton, Pascal, Kepler, Descartes, just to name a few, often held mystical beliefs. Yeah. And these weren't always front and center. You know, sometimes they were kind of kept private,
Right.
or in less developed forms.
Yeah.
But they were definitely present.
Interesting.
There's that quote attributed to Newton. He says, "Only a little knowledge distances one from God, but much knowledge leads one back to him."
Wow.
And that really captures this idea that even the founders, some of these founders of modern science weren't necessarily operating in a purely secular space.
Right.
Their worldviews often included spiritual or mystical elements. It suggests that the strict separation that we often assume today might be a more recent development.
It almost feels counterintuitive to kind of our current understanding of science as being purely objective and based solely on empirical evidence.
Exactly. And the text even touches on the limitations that early proponents of positivism tried to impose on science. It mentions Auguste Comte, initially suggesting that certain things like the composition of celestial bodies would forever remain beyond our scientific grasp, the ignorabimus, as it were,
Yeah.
the things we can't know.
Right.
But then, what happened just a few short years later, the discovery of spectral analysis opened up this entire previously unimaginable realm to scientific investigation.
Yeah.
So it really underscores the potential pitfalls of setting rigid boundaries for what science can and cannot explore.
So while positivism aimed to kind of keep science strictly within the bounds of the observable, science itself kept pushing those very boundaries. What about the mystical thinkers during this same period? Were they also focused on the observable world?
Interestingly, the material points out a fascinating parallel. It suggests that, much like positivism in recent centuries, the vast majority of mystics also became largely immersed in the world of phenomena, the things we experience directly.
Yeah.
So despite their fundamentally different approaches to understanding reality, both seem to be, in their own ways, quite focused on the observable world around us.
That's a really interesting connection. Now the material then kind of transitions to this concept of Eastern idealism and how it compares to Western philosophical thought.
Yeah.
And it sounds like the author of our source material has a pretty strong perspective on this.
They certainly do. There's a rather dramatic quote from Schlegel. He's comparing what he calls the most sublime philosophy of Europeans,
Okay.
the idealism of reason advanced by the Greek philosophers, to a mere little Promethean spark, weak, trembling, and always ready to expire amidst a whole flood of the divine brilliance of the midday sun.
Wow.
And then he contrasts this with what he calls the abundant light and power of Eastern idealism.
Okay, wow, that's a stark contrast. What specifically about Eastern idealism is being held up as so superior here?
The text focuses quite intently on Vedanta philosophy. It emphasizes its unique and elevated position on a global scale, particularly highlighting how it connects the individual self, that core sense of I,
Yeah.
directly with the ultimate essence of divinity,
Yeah.
the concepts of Atman and Brahman.
Right.
The author makes a rather assertive claim that no Western philosophers, not even the intellectual giants like Plato, Spinoza, Kant, Hegel, or Schopenhauer, ever reached such philosophical heights as this understanding within Vedanta.
That's a pretty bold statement. What's at the heart of this Vedanta perspective?
Yeah.
That puts it above these Western philosophical traditions, according to our source.
The text points to this fundamental idea of an initial oneness.
Okay.
And a final oneness. The Vedanta perspective, as presented here, posits that in the very beginning there could only be one. A singular, undifferentiated reality.
Okay.
And similarly, in the end, there will only be that one again. Whether we call it Atman, the individual soul, or Brahman, the ultimate reality.
Right.
And this cyclical view of existence, rooted in this foundational unity, is presented as a towering intellectual achievement, seemingly untouched by the back and forth debates and challenges that have characterized much of Western philosophy.
So it's kind of bypassing all of the debates and the arguments.
It seems to be.
And kind of going straight to the core truth.
It's the heart of the matter.
Yeah. Okay, so from this kind of grand idea of cosmic unity, the discussion then kind of moves into the nature of being and consciousness itself.
Yes.
And there's this term introduced, being in prolongation.
Yeah.
What exactly does that signify?
Well, think of being in prolongation as the ultimate undifferentiated source code of reality.
Okay.
The fundamental substance before anything specific exists. It's presented as the supreme transcendental reality, the very primary substance.
Okay.
From which everything else originates.
Right.
It's described as defining the universal basic principles.
Right.
In its most abstract transcendental form, it's the very nature of the idea of divinity.
Okay.
And in its most concrete, differentiated, affirmed state, it defines the nature of the entire cosmos, both in its collective generality and in its individual created aspects.
So being is the absolute foundation.
Absolutely.
And how does consciousness kind of fit into this fundamental picture?
Well, being in its transcendental essence is described as the first hypostasis of substantial reality.
Okay.
Now think of hypostasis as a fundamental aspect or expression of a core reality.
Okay.
The second hypostasis, then, is the transcendental consciousness that is inherent within this being. And these two, being and transcendental consciousness, are inseparable. They mutually confirm and define each other. Consciousness is presented as the inner nature of being.
Okay.
And being as the very nature of consciousness.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how does our everyday differentiated world, right, that we experience, how does that relate to this kind of absolute world of being and transcendental consciousness?
Well, the differentiated world, the world of individual objects and experiences is defined in contrast to the absolute world as a field of varying intensity of consciousness.
Okay.
So this implies that what we might call general cosmic consciousness has a created nature,
Right.
as opposed to the integral consciousness of the transcendental absolute world.
Okay.
The material then brings humanity into the picture,
Okay.
stating that we, as the focal point of cosmic consciousness,
Okay.
in its highest degree, compared to our immediate environment, summarize our existence with the formula Homo sapiens. This is seen as a way of encompassing the two primary hypostases of being, the affirming and the affirmed, into a third, representing the verified being.
That's a pretty concise way to frame our existence. Now moving on to kind of the concepts of reality and illusion.
Yeah.
It seems like the source material kind of suggests that our everyday reality might not be quite as solid
Right.
as we perceive it to be from this kind of higher,
Yeah, from that more unified perspective.
more unified perspective.
That's right. The created aspect of reality, everything we perceive around us, is described as fundamentally illusory from the perspective of what's called the supreme synthesis.
Okay.
That ultimate unity we discussed earlier.
Right.
However, this illusion appears very real to consciousness that is separated from this synthesis,
Right.
to our individual awareness.
Yeah.
The text then introduces the concept of superpersonality as the exhaustive totality of all individual differentiations. And this is presented as the first category of absolute reality.
Okay.
This idea is kind of encapsulated in the formula. The absolute and the illusion of the environment are the opposite poles of the essence of every factor of nature.
So we're living within this illusion, but
Yep.
is there any way for us as a kind of individual consciousnesses
Right.
to kind of get a sense of or even grasp the absolute from within it?
Well, while the absolute in its purest form might be beyond our direct, complete comprehension,
Right.
the text suggests that we inherently possess the ability to determine the degree to which any given factor in our experience is separated from its absolute prototype, its original perfect form.
Okay.
So even if we can't fully grasp, the unknown and the inaccessible, we can still perceive the path leading towards it,
Right.
and understand our relative proximity or distance. So this implies that by carefully analyzing the relative world we experience, we can a priori,
Yeah.
meaning prior to specific experience,
Right.
identify categories of the absolute,
Okay.
limited only by the capacity of our consciousness to perceive them.
So our ability to kind of categorize and understand things is really the limitation here.
That seems to be the suggestion.
Yeah. Okay. That leads us nicely into the idea of intuition as a primary means of gaining knowledge.
Yeah.
And it sounds like the material places a very high value on this way of knowing.
Absolutely. It shares Schopenhauer's profound view that philosophy is essentially a conscious return to intuition, a tapping back into this fundamental way of understanding.
Okay.
It also makes reference to Bergson's perspective on intuition,
Right.
implying a similar emphasis on this intuitive grasp of reality. And then there's Plutarch's insightful idea of the true servant of Isis, who not only analyzes divine teachings with reason and logic, but also penetrates their deeper truths with spirit. Suggesting an intuitive level of understanding that goes beyond mere intellectual analysis.
So intuition isn't just some kind of vague gut feeling. Then it's presented here as a legitimate,
Oh yeah,
powerful way of knowing.
yeah. According to the text, intuition is a property inherent in all people.
Okay.
Something we all possess.
Okay.
And it ranks foremost among all other means of perception and cognition. It's described as prima inter pares,
Right.
first among equals.
Yeah.
However, it's equally emphasized that intuition is always subjective. It's a deeply personal and individual way of knowing.
Okay. Now what about the world around us? The kind of environment that we perceive.
Yeah.
The material introduces this concept of the cosmic passive environment.
Okay.
What exactly is that referring to?
The phenomenal picture of the world. Okay.
Everything that we can perceive and experience through our senses is referred to as the cosmic passive environment.
Right.
The text then offers a rather dense formula to kind of explain our relationship to it.
Okay.
It says, man lives in a world of realizing impulses, but through the sense of synthesis achieves a priori knowledge of the polarly opposite principles, substantial agents, lying one above and the other below his intellectual world in the order of synthesis and collectively expressing the cosmic motive difference of potentials, the external active reflection of the ultimate reality.
Right. And now, in kind of simpler terms,
Yeah.
what is this suggesting?
What this is suggesting is that that we live in a world where we experience impulses becoming real.
Okay.
However, our capacity for synthesis,
Right.
our ability to kind of put things together and see the bigger picture allows us to gain a kind of inherent prior understanding of fundamental principles that exist beyond our immediate intellectual grasp.
And these principles in turn reflect the ultimate reality in an active way.
Okay, that's a lot to process.
Uh-huh.
Let's move on to this supreme synthetic teaching,
Right.
the Sacred Book of Thoth.
Okay, yeah.
This sounds like a really central element
Yes.
in the source material.
Yeah, it is indeed presented as a comprehensive system of doctrines that essentially map out the stages through which the one reality affirms itself.
Okay.
On another level, it reveals the pathways, the underlying laws, and the fundamental principles by which the human creative spirit, in the very act of creating its own understanding of the world, can essentially recreate the unity that was once disrupted, and in doing so, affirm itself as a self-aware and integral part of that whole. There's a mention of an invocation of Jupiter,
Okay.
seen as a representation of a higher power, which seems to set the stage for this profound teaching.
And how is this Sacred Book of Thoth structured? How do we as kind of individuals gain access to this kind of deeper knowledge that it contains?
Well, the text explains that the one reality reveals itself to the inquiring human spirit through a structured system of 21 great arcana,
Okay.
which form the second and central part of the book.
Okay.
And we can only truly begin to understand the first part of the book by first synthesizing the knowledge and insights gained from these 21 arcana.
Okay.
The third part then becomes accessible as we learn to apply the general principles that we've gleaned from the second part to the world and our experiences within it. The path to this deeper knowledge is described as something singular and absolute for each individual, uniquely revealed by the divine light that emanates from these 21 great arcana.
So it's not a one size fits all approach.
Yeah.
But a very personal journey of kind of unfolding understanding.
It's a journey of self-discovery.
Yeah. Okay. Now the material then kind of touches on the object of philosophy itself.
Yeah.
And the specific aim of these initial pages that we've been kind of exploring in our deep dive.
Yes. It quotes Bacon's classic definition: Philosophiae objectum triplex, Deus, natura, et homo.
Right.
The object of philosophy is threefold: God, nature, and man.
Right.
The text then clarifies that our current exploration, focusing on pages 1 to 48, specifically aims to delve into the first two parts of the Book of Thoth, those great arcana that concern the nature of God and the nature of man.
Okay.
It also notes the established tradition of the arcana-specific sequence and numbering,
Okay.
even mentioning the dual designations that exist for the 21st and 22nd arcana in some systems.
Right.
Ultimately, it asserts that this complete system of 22 great arcana forms a self-contained and comprehensive whole with its particular number and order arising directly from pure reason.
Now, shifting gears somewhat, the discussion in the source material then kind of touches upon the historical figure of Simon Magus.
Okay.
And the early movement of Gnosticism.
Yeah.
And how their teachings were initially perceived,
right,
and perhaps significantly distorted over time.
Yeah. This is a really fascinating historical point that the material brings up.
Yeah.
It highlights Simon Magus as a pivotal figure in early religious and philosophical seeking, noting that his main work, often referred to as the Great Announcement.
Okay.
And the writings of his immediate followers have unfortunately been lost to history. The text points out that early church apologists, particularly influential figures like Origen and Tertullian, are accused of significantly distorting Gnostic teachings,
right,
to the point where they became almost unrecognizable and seemed nonsensical to later readers. However, the material emphasizes the crucial discovery of the Philosophema manuscript in the 19th century, a work attributed to Bishop Hippolytus.
Okay.
This discovery, with its true title being something akin to Refutation of All Heresies,
right,
is presented as a watershed moment. It's argued that this manuscript revealed the true nature of Gnosticism, offering a stark contrast to the biased accounts provided by the early apologists.
So it's giving us a more accurate picture
It seems to be.
of what Gnosticism really was.
Right. The text even suggests that that what were once dismissed as absurd ramblings,
Okay.
attributed to the Gnostics by their detractors, were in reality brilliant works of philosophical genius.
Wow.
It really underscores the importance of having primary sources
Yeah.
and being cautious about historically biased accounts.
So it's a powerful reminder of how historical perspectives and potential biases can really obscure deeper wisdom and understanding.
That's right.
Okay. The conversation in the source then kind of moves to the concepts of the power of the word
Okay.
and divine light.
Yeah.
What kind of key ideas are being conveyed here?
The text describes how human reason, when it receives a reflection of the divine light, essentially becomes a tablet of the supreme covenant.
Okay.
And the prophetic words that are then inscribed upon this tablet are said to ignite a responsive flame within the hearts of people. It also introduces a key Kabbalistic concept, the Ancient of Days,
Okay.
which is depicted as having 3 heads that ultimately form one head, representing the highest of the high, the ultimate principle.
Yeah.
The text points out that just as this ultimate principle is embodied in number 3, so too are other luminaries, often referred to as Sephirot in Kabbalistic tradition, similarly contained within this fundamental number. This reinforces the idea of a triadic structure,
Right.
being at the very heart of divine manifestation.
Right. This is this kind of 3-in-1 idea.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. This recurring theme of the divine and its various manifestations
Yeah.
kind of continues as the discussion turns to the profound question of the name of God and the kind of philosophical origins of movements like Neoplatonism and Gnosticism.
Yeah. The text brings in the powerful Hebrew phrase ego sum qui sum,
Right.
often translated as I am that I am.
Right.
And Plato's equally significant Greek phrase testo sissel,
Okay.
which means the truly being, as fundamental expressions of divine being. It then delves into how the ancient teachings of Egyptian hierophants,
Right.
partly through a direct line of succession and partly through the influence of Kabbalistic traditions and the rich tapestry of Greek philosophy, significantly shaped the development of both Neoplatonism and Gnosticism.
Okay.
During this intellectual transmission, the core doctrine of being as the supreme primary transcendental category of divinity is said to have been preserved in its purest form. The text also quotes Simon Mergus himself, defining God as the totality and primary source of the potencies of being,
Right.
emphasizing this foundational concept.
And there's also this intriguing mention of a nothing
Yeah.
that kind of predates all of existence
Right.
in some of these mystical traditions.
Yeah.
How does that kind of abstract concept fit into this framework?
Well, the text acknowledges the concept of a primordial nothing that existed even before the very beginners of anything else we can conceive of.
Right.
However, it's crucial to understand that this nothing is not to be taken as literal nothingness in the
Yeah.
sense of absolute non-existence.
Right.
Instead, it refers to something that precedes being itself, something that exists before non-being.
Yep.
If you can wrap your head around that, it's a pre-existent potentiality, not a void in the way we typically understand it.
That's a subtle but really, really important distinction to make.
Absolutely.
The discussion in the source then kind of turns to the essential nature of God as being eternal and unchanging.
Yeah, it shares a powerful description from St. Martin,
Okay.
portraying God as eternal, perpetually immutable, utterly unchangeable, and as the sole being who can truthfully declare, I am that I am. Our own being, in contrast, is described as something borrowed, perhaps even just a fleeting drop in the vast ocean of his essence. The text emphasizes that even if the entire cosmos were to dissolve and cease to exist, this infinite, boundless, immeasurable being would remain. The only one who can truly utter those profound words of self-affirmation.
Okay, this understanding of God's kind of static, eternal nature then leads into the idea of world creation, not as some kind of external act,
Right.
but rather as an inherent aspect of divine self-consciousness.
That's right. It's a shift from the unmoving God to the very act of creation.
Right.
Exactly. The idea of world creation is presented not as an external act performed by a separate entity, but rather as an intrinsic aspect of the divinity's own self-consciousness, and therefore also an aspect of the divinity itself, the creating divinity.
Okay.
Through this active analog of the absolute, the incomprehensible first cause essentially affirms itself in the totality of its differentiated aspects. Each individual aspect originates directly from the divinity, making creation a process of emanation. By revealing and affirming this aspect in the relative world we experience, the divinity is in turn reflected within it.
Okay.
Therefore, creation is simultaneously understood as emanation, manifestation, and reflection. The very act of thought is seen as the connecting link between the emanating center and the specific thought or created thing. This leads to the first fundamental doctrine,
Okay.
Arcanum the First. The creating divinity serves as the crucial link between the absolute and the manifested world, ultimately making it both the absolute source of all things and the ultimate goal of all knowledge.
So the path to truly understanding creation is to understand the very nature of this creating divinity.
Exactly.
Okay. The material then kind of delves further into what it calls the doctrine of manifestation.
Here, the text brings in a perspective from Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa on this Arcanum First, stating that the origin of the world lies in the divine essence itself, desiring to know itself through the mirror of its own creation.
Hmm.
This divine essence is first reflected in what's termed world passivity. And in this very act of reflection, it becomes dynamic, active, and is perceived by humanity as the triune creating divinity,
Okay.
a trinity that is an aspect of the absolute trinity, and is best understood through the concept of the dynamic ternary, which forms the second lower section of the triad of the first three great arcana.
And this first divine ternary seems to be kind of presented as a foundational concept that resonates across different religious
Oh, absolutely.
and philosophical traditions.
Yeah, the text, even referencing the Vika Chudamani, a key Vedantic text, states that this first divine ternary lies at the very heart of all earthly religions.
Okay.
In its essence, it's described as a complete and well-defined concept.
Right.
But its external manifestations appear in a diverse array.